Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. In less than 3 hours, J.D. Vance will be debating the Tampon Tim and the two Democrat Party mouthpieces at CBS, 3 against 1, and he will do great. It doesn't matter what the media say about the debate. They will do great. We'll be talking about that. These horrendous flood. I want to, at some point in the show, I want to remind people where they can go to help our fellow citizens who are still in desperate need. I want to talk about this longshore attempt to cripple our economy. That's what their boss said. We can cripple the economy. I was listening to this guy. I said, what kind of a friggin' thug is this guy? And then I digged even further into what these guys are making. Look, I'm not pro-union, anti-union. I'm pro-market. If people want to join a union, great. If they don't want to join a union, great. I'm opposed to monopolies, whether they're union monopolies or corporate monopolies. I'm for competition. That's what free markets are about. You cannot have a single union shut down the American economy. I'm sorry. I agree with Harry Truman. I believe cops need unions, firefighter needs unions, other people too, great. They vote for unions, great. They don't vote for unions, great. It's whatever they want. But you can't have a union shut down the American economy when we have millions of people in the South and in the East who are fighting for their very survival, when you have hundreds of millions of Americans who are desperate, who can't afford prices to begin with. And you'll see a lot of these longshoremen earning over $150,000 a year with unbelievable medical benefits. Not all, but a lot. And we'll get into that later. Tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah. I will not be here. Our buddy Larry O'Connor will be here, but I'll be back the next day. Then, of course, there's Israel. Hamas attacks Israel, Israel fights back. Hezbollah attacks Israel, Israel fights back. The Houthis attack Israel, Israel fights back. Iran attacks Israel, Israel's going to fight back. And yet it's Israel that's always escalating. Oh, no. Biden-Harris don't deserve one whit of credit. They were the funding source for Iran, which in turn was the funding source for Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and everything else. I watched this all day long. And even some of our friends don't tell the story about how tens of billions of dollars have flowed into Iran directly and indirectly by this regime in the United States. how they've been coddling them. We don't have a single plan to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon, which they can now put on their hypersonic missiles that they've developed. This is Obama. This is Biden. This is Harris. This is Blinken. It's a disaster what they've created in the Middle East. And of course they hate Netanyahu. Why? Because I've been saying, and now others are regurgitating this on Fox, because he's Churchill. That's why. That's why. And then today, terrorists, they go into Tel Aviv and the Jaffa, where these young people are. They love killing young people. They come out with two rifles, or one's with a rifle, one with a knife. They murder 7 of them, wound 8 of them. And one guy, I believe, pulls a pistol and murders and kills both of them. The press secretary, the Defense Department today, they said that they worked with Israel. They shot 181 ballistic missiles into the country of Israel. Almost all of them were taken down. They have a system where if they're not actually going to hit a populated area, they let the missile go ahead and hit the the Mediterranean Sea or hit some general area, because it costs $2 million a pop to knock these things down. And, of course, these systems aren't perfect. They're damn good, but they're not perfect. And so at the press briefing at the Pentagon today, one intrepid reporter asked, well, how many missiles did we fire on these 2 destroyers? We fired 12. Well, how many of those actually hit their target? We don't know yet. I'm glad the United States military is there. I detest the fact that the commander-in-chief is Joe Biden, or this thing would be over already. Let us not forget that it is Iran that's trying to murder Donald Trump as I speak, as well as others. Pompeo, Bolton, O'Neill, a whole slew of people. They're our enemy. Can you imagine them having a nuclear weapon on these ballistic missiles? And by the way, it's not a nuclear weapon. They're going to have a breakout with 3 ballistic missiles carrying nuclear warheads. So what is the Biden administration's plan? There is no plan. So it's left to tiny Israel to figure out what to do, and they're going to hit them back. And again, during all the reporting today, what will Israel do? What will Israel do? Well, Israel has one arm tied behind its back because of Harris and Biden and Blinken. It's got to be, a limited response. Can you imagine if 181 ballistic missiles were shot into the United States? A limited response. Or Hamas did what it did, or Hezbollah did what it did. It's just sickening. But I want to circle back. Briefly. I worked in the Reagan administration. I remember when President Reagan proposed the Strategic Defense Initiative. All of these defensive missile systems, Iron Dome, David Sling, even other missile systems. Can you imagine if there wasn't a defensive missile system? What would be happening in Israel today? They'd have to use one of their atomic bombs on Iran because they couldn't afford to be hit by all these missiles. This is what Reagan did for humanity. And he was fought every step of the way by the Democrat Party and by Joe Biden. So it is important to have context. Some of you are voting. Some of you are going to be voting. It is important to know the mentality of Joe Biden and Harris and that wing of the ruling class. And just so you know, Israel has an iron dome over its country. We do not. So even though the idea started with the United States, we're too busy with electric vehicles. We're too busy with redistribution of wealth on climate change. We're too busy bankrupting ourselves over this Marxist Islamist agenda. We don't even defend ourselves. Now, this is just 2 minutes. Ronald Reagan, March 1983, when he announces the Strategic Defense Initiative, he's immediately attacked by the same media today who hates Reagan, hates America, hates our security, hates the defense, and they called it Star Wars, and they mocked him. They mocked him as a buffoon. Cut one, go.
America does possess now the technologies to attain very significant improvements in the effectiveness of our conventional non-nuclear forces. Proceeding boldly with these new technologies, we can significantly reduce any incentive that the Soviet Union may have to threaten attack against the United States or its allies. As we pursue our goal of defensive technologies, we recognize that our allies rely upon our strategic offensive power to deter attacks against them. Their vital interests and ours are inextricably linked. Their safety and ours are one, and no change in technology can or will alter that reality. We must and shall continue to honor our commitments. I clearly recognize that defensive systems have limitations and raise certain problems and ambiguities. If paired with offensive systems, they can be viewed as fostering an aggressive policy, and no one wants that. But with these considerations firmly in mind, I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. Tonight, consistent with our obligations under the ABM Treaty and recognizing the need for closer consultation with our allies, I'm taking an important first step. I am directing a comprehensive and intensive effort to define a long-term research and development program to begin to achieve our ultimate goal of eliminating the threat posed by strategic nuclear missiles. This could pave the way for arms control measures to eliminate the weapons themselves. We seek neither military superiority nor political advantage. Our only purpose, one all people share, is to search for ways to reduce the danger of nuclear war. My fellow Americans, tonight we're launching an effort which holds the promise of changing the course of human history. There will be risks, and results take time, but I believe we can do it. As we cross this threshold, I ask for your prayers and your support.
This was revolutionary. 1983 March. He came under immediate attack by the Democrat Party and their media. And one of those who led the attack against the Strategic Defense Initiative mocked it, said it was dangerous. That's right. Missiles hitting missiles. What kind of an idiot is Reagan? What kind of comic book character is he? Was Joe Biden in 1986 at the National Press Club. Cut 2, go.
This brings us to the administration's fifth myth, and surely the most remarkable in my opinion. Unable or unwilling to build on arms control progress of his predecessors, and under mounting public pressure as a result, the president in 1983 performed an astounding political act. Like the Baryshnikov of nuclear politics, he simply pirouetted and leaped over the entire issue, announcing a presidential vision that the American people could escape nuclear danger, not by arms control, but by erecting an anti-nuclear Astrodome over the United States of America. This immaculately conceived notion has obviously demonstrated that it has a certain mystical appeal. Unfortunately, it has no possibility of practicable implementation, as asserted by an overwhelming body of scientific opinion, by common sense, and even reportedly by Assistant Secretary Pearl in his private conversations with our allies. To say that Star Wars will not work, however, is far from calling it meaningless. For the President's quixotic initiative is already inflicting serious damage on American interest, in my opinion. It has confused our national debate, perhaps deliberately so, about the direction of American nuclear strategy. It has increased and misallocated our defense budget at a time requiring austerity and carefully established priorities, emphasizing the improvement of conventional forces.
Go.
For so long as it remains non-negotiable, Star Wars constitutes a major impediment to arms control. This multiplicity of negative consequences combines, in my opinion, into a single conclusion. Star Wars represents a fundamental assault on the concepts, alliances, and arms control agreements that have buttressed American security for several decades, and the President's continued adherence to it constitutes one of the most reckless and irresponsible acts in the history of modern statecraft. The past 6 years have demonstrated that the world can survive in the short run without progress on nuclear arms control.
This man is a buffoon. A dangerous, dangerous man who's contributed nothing to this country in half a century. Reagan even had to shut down the government twice to get enough funding to continue the scientific research for the Strategic Defense Initiative. One small country came to the United States 2 years after Reagan announced it and said to the United States, said to the Reagan administration, we will work with you to develop a system. A nation that is always on the cutting edge of technology. And that nation is called Israel. And Israel and the United States entered into joint agreements to develop a strategic defense initiative, to develop the Iron Dome, to develop David's Sling, to develop even a more advanced system, which Israel would then put in place. But the United States has not. Other than 2 cities that I shall not mention, we are naked. Now you think about that. Biden, who's been funding Iran. Biden, who is now withholding weapons from Israel. You think about that. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. By the way, as an aside, it's an embarrassment to watch some of my formerly conservative friends slobbering all over themselves defending what the longshoreman union is doing. I have no problem with the longshoremen any more than I have any problem with most teachers. It's their thuggish bosses that I have a problem with. And I will return to that. Every union's not the same. Every company's not the same. Every industry's not the same. So I support unions. Well, it depends which union it is. I don't support teachers' unions. You can support teachers without supporting their unions. Wow, you're just a big business guy. No, there's a lot of big business I despise. So that has nothing to do with it. You can't have a union boss essentially saying, give us what we want or we're shutting down your economy, we're driving up costs, people are going to get poor. The people who are suffering now will not be able to get the water and food that they need. Oh, okay. You believe in that? I don't believe in that. And so this is the same Joe Biden, by the way. Same Joe Biden running foreign policy. And when he said what he said in 1986, Ronald Reagan wrote in his diary, and he was a very nice man. He wrote, Joe Biden is a demagogue. Because he knew he was an idiot. And he knew what he was saying was undermining the prospect of a serious, technologically advanced defense system. And by the way, when Reagan came out with this, the Soviet Union tried to keep up, and they collapsed. This is Mark Levin with an urgent message. We are living in grave and dark economic times that are going to get worse. We just saw an abysmal jobs report while unemployment shot up to the highest level since the end of 2021. Meanwhile, the stock market looks like a gamble. Many banks are getting crushed as recession fears mount. The S&P Banks Index fell 2.4% in a single day. That's a lot. Regional banks fell nearly 3%. That's even more. These are bad signs. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts. You need to protect your wealth. That's where diversification and gold comes in. It's been a bedrock of wealth preservation for centuries. And the best company I know of is Advantage Gold. Their experts can help you protect your savings from economic chaos. Call now, 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Call now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
It's a pleasure to have our friend Senator Lindsey Graham with us. Lindsey Graham, this administration has funded Iran directly and indirectly, which has funded its surrogates. Hamas attacks Israel, Israel defends itself. Hezbollah attacks Israel, Israel defends itself. The Houthis attack Israel, Israel defends itself. Iran attacks Israel, now Israel's going to defend itself. What the hell is wrong with this administration? They're so proud of themselves. We shot 12 rockets in the sky. We don't know how many of their missiles we hit. Defense, 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 defense. Isn't now the time to deal with this, Senator?
Absolutely. So, one, thanks for having me on the show, and thoughts and prayers with our friends in Israel. I'll be going over soon. So the root of all this problem is Iran. The biggest miscalculation since World War II is the administration's view of the Iranian regime. It all started with that. They provided sanctions relief. They gave the Iranian regime $80 billion in new revenue. When Trump left office, they were selling 300,000 barrels of oil a day. Now it's 1.2 million. That's $80 billion over the last 3.5 years. It's gone into Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Iranian war machine. They think Iran is a normal country. They're not. The Iranian Ayatollah is a religious Nazi. He wants three things. He wants to purify the faith and go after the Sunni Islam world. He wants to kill all the Jews in Israel and come after us as Americans. That's not my words. Those are his. So this administration's obsessed with trying to appease Iran, like the world was obsessed with trying not to provoke Hitler. In the name of not escalating, the world is on fire. To my friends in Israel, do whatever the hell you have to do.
You know, Lindsey Graham, I'm watching the press, which is truly pathetic. And I'm watching the press, and what's Israel going to do? What's Israel going to do? Well, first of all, they're apparently having to negotiate with the appeasers in our State Department, in our Defense Department, to get permission to do something that really needs to be done. And they're withholding weapons from Israel. They've been withholding weapons from Israel that you guys in Congress voted for.
Well, I tell you, Mark, what I'm going to do, and I've talked to one Democrat already. I talked to the Israelis today. I talked to Bibi. I talked to the ambassador. They're going to provide me a list of needs for their missile defense system. It's going to be around $10 billion. They're shooting everything they've got. The Arrow is the high-altitude defense system. David Sling is the medium level, and Iron Dome is the lower level, dealing with missiles at that level. They need to be restocked. They need to be replenished. So I'm going to say on your radio show tonight that I will do everything I can as soon as I can to give Israel more military support for their missile defense system. As to this administration, they have been trying to hold Israel back. They've been slow-walking weapons to Ukraine. They don't understand the only thing Putin will deter him is getting hit, force of arms. This war has gotten out of control in Ukraine because they're not getting the weapons they need. And when it comes to Israel, they've been slow-walking weapons. This is an outrage. Israel's not the problem. Iran's the problem. So when we go back, and we need to be back like tomorrow, there needs to be an aid package for our friends in Israel.
In all your years in the Senate, you worked with Kamala Harris, or at least you saw her. She's vice president. She's never lifted a finger to help the state of Israel, has she?
No, she's a mile wide and an inch deep. She sat there while some student, accused Israel of committing genocide and didn't say a word. The first things out of her mouth after she had a meeting at the UN was to call on Israel to create a ceasefire. The world is literally upside down. You have the largest state sponsor of terrorism that has hacked into President Trump's campaign file Iran, threatening the life of President Trump. Listen to this. This is 30-something days before the election. The Iranians had been caught trying to assassinate President Trump, and President Biden has not said one word. He should tell the Iranians the ultimate election interference is try to kill a candidate. If you're coming after Trump or any other official, we will hit you, and we hit you hard. We've lost all deterrence. They're sitting on the sidelines.
Let me stop you there a second.
Yeah.
Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan. If a regime like this threatened the life of a presidential candidate, they'd know it's an act of war and they'd do something about it, wouldn't they?
It literally is, Mark. I mean, what is a hostile act under the law of war? Trying to assassinate the nominee of a major party would fall in that category. Hacking into a campaign of a nominee of a major party and trying to share it for a political advantage is the ultimate disruption of democracy. I don't want to hear any more about defending democracy. You have a chance here, President Biden and Vice President Harris, to tell the Iranians if you continue down this path, you do so at your own peril. They're literally sitting on the sidelines and have done nothing publicly to challenge Iran's brazen attempt to kill President Trump. And what did Trump say? If the shoe were on the other foot, if they were coming
he'd
after
obliterate
my opponent, I would obliterate them. That's what Roosevelt would have said. I think that's what any right-minded person would do. So when it comes to Kamala Harris, not only has she been an unreliable ally of Israel, she is AWOL at a time the Jewish state needs all the help it can get. She has done nothing but talk. She tried to deter the invasion of Russia 4 days before they invaded, said you better not. They did. So nobody in the world of bad guys are going to be deterred by Harris. And let me say this about Trump. He can be a handful, but I've come to admire him, I like him, and I miss him. If he sent a rowboat with one guy with a pistol, they'd all stop. Mm-hmm. The point is, the Iranians know that if they screw with him, they're going to pay a heavy price. We've lost deterrence. It's no accident since he's left office. The world is on fire.
We only have a few minutes, Senator. What exactly are we doing to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? In fact, we subsidize them. Mali is under investigation, and they won't give you guys on the Hill all the information. He had 3, I argue, spies. People can say what they want, who worked for him. They were special pleaders for Iran, communicating with Iran. I mean, this makes Alger Hiss look like a joke. And
well, it's funny. You can't make it up. I mean, in the election cycle of 2024, you have the Iranians trying to assassinate President Trump, brazenly so. We had a briefing about this. You have the chief negotiator for the Biden administration being accused of being, basically an agent of Iran. So here's what I would do. If I were the Israelis, I would tell the Biden administration, we're going to hit them in their pocketbook. We're going to knock some of their refineries out. Without oil money, they have no ability to hurt anybody. Cut them off at the knees, hit their refineries. As to a nuclear weapon, here's what I fear the most. The more Israel diminishes Hamas and Hezbollah, the proxies of Iran, the more likely they feel that Iran needs to break out to get a nuke as an insurance policy. And I think they'll try to do it before Trump comes back into office. So I really worry about a breakout by the Iranians to try to acquire a nuclear weapon as an insurance policy.
I agree 100%. So let's be honest. It's left to Israel to do this. The United States isn't going to do it. We have 30% of our Navy there, and we're still not going to do it. And just tell the country before you leave us, when you're talking about hypersonic or ballistic missiles, those are intercontinental missiles. In other words, it's not just aimed for the region. It's aimed for the United States, perhaps, right?
Yeah, so let me just tell you about the biggest game changer in the world would be a nuclear-armed Iran. The Arabs would want a nuke of their own because Iran wants to obliterate Sunni Islam. They feel threatened. Saudi feels threatened by Iran. The state of Israel, one Holocaust is enough. The state of Israel will never allow a radical religious Nazi like the Ayatollah to get a weapon without a fight. We've got a bunch of power in the region, but Iran doesn't think we'll use it. If we had one rowboat in the Mediterranean under Trump's watch, they would stand down. We've lost deterrence. So to my friends, and I love you deeply, the state of Israel, if you need to hit their nuclear program, hit it. If you need to hit their refineries, hit them. Protect yourself. Help is on the way. Trump is going to win.
All right, we'll keep up the fight. You know, half the problem is, well, never mind. Senator, I want to thank you very, very much. Keep up the battle, and we'll have you back, I hope.
Yes, sir. God bless.
You too. Be safe out there. Yep, exactly the wrong people in the White House. And Kamala Harris wants a promotion because she's so competent in all things that she does. Right, Mr. Producer? She's just fantastic. All right, let's see here. Hour 2, we're having Trey Yingst. Now, Trey Yingst, he was scheduled to come on this program 5 weeks ago. So the time is propitious. And in the third hour, we'll have Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon. And in between it all, we'll not just discuss what's going on. You know, people say to me, very few, but some, well, you talk about the Middle East a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I talk about a lot of things. And if I talked about the Third Reich in the early 1930s, nobody would have believed me. Nobody would have believed me. I don't go with the flow. I'm not looking to paint by the numbers. I see what's happening. If there's going to be a World War III, it's going to be in the Middle East. And it's going to involve us. So this isn't about a region. It's not about one faith or another faith. This is about us. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Two terrorists walked out of a train stop in Tel Aviv, part of the city called Jaffa. One had an M16, the other had a knife, and they slaughtered 7 Jews and injured 8 or 9 others, and they were shot dead. And it's very interesting. The constant reports about how all the civilians that Israel kills. If Israel wanted to kill civilians, it'd be very easy to do. But that's always the target for the Islamist Nazis. Always the target. You know, President Trump was in Wisconsin today. Truer words were never spoken. Cut 9, go.
The world right now is spiraling out of control. You might not have seen what's happened because it was a few hours ago. A lot of people were here. There's so many people outside, which we appreciate. But a lot of people were here a short time ago. Iran launched 181 ballistic missiles at Israel. And I've been talking about World War III for a long time. And I don't want to make predictions because the predictions always come true. We're not going to make, but they are very close to global catastrophe. We have a non-existent president and a non-existent vice president who should be in charge, but nobody knows what's going on. She was at a fundraiser in San Francisco.
Yeah, and they put out all the pictures of her in the Situation Room, looking very earnest and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, we got to this point for a reason. There was a reason there was peace under Trump. There's a reason there's war under Biden and Harris. There's a reason why Iran was on its back bankrupt. It didn't have weapons, couldn't sell its oil, and there's a reason now that it has hundreds of billions of dollars. And you know, it's amazing, just like this administration is in many ways funding both sides of the Russia-Ukraine war, it's also funding both sides of what's going on in the Middle East. Your tax dollars have been going into Iran and these terrorists. Remember? And they lifted sanctions immediately. They never put them in place, and then they just lie about it because that's what they do. That's what they do. Cut 10, please, go.
But when I was president, Iran was in total check. The Iranians were starved for cash. Nobody was buying their oil. And they were ready to make a deal. They wanted to make a deal. They wanted to do something. And a terrible thing. You know, we got more votes in the second election. As you know, we're 2016, 2020. We got millions and millions more votes the second time. And they missed by just a little sliver, right? They said, somebody said like 19,000 votes. It's just a disgrace. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made Iran rich in a very short period of 3.5 years. They have $300 billion now. They're rich.
So they say today, we are ironclad, their favorite word, behind Israel. No, they're not. They tried to topple the Netanyahu government that was elected. As I speak, they're withholding armaments that Israel needs. I mean, they don't have any endless inventory of arms. Many of the arms that were put aside for Israel went to Ukraine. Did you know that? Israel voted on these arms. The Congress voted on these arms for Israel, and they're slow walking them. While Israel's fighting on 7 fronts. That's never happened before. So you need to think about this, folks. I saw the governor of Pennsylvania on Fox with Cavuto today. He almost made me throw up, this punk. Shapiro. Trashing Netanyahu. Trashing Netanyahu? Talking up Biden and Harris. Biden and Harris? Shameless. This punk governor in Pennsylvania, we've tried to get him, haven't we, Mr. Producer? We never hear back. I want him on radio. I'll take him on TV. He only goes in friendly formats. I want to debate this guy desperately. I want to talk to him. He ducks us. By the way, as a side issue, some people won't like this, and I don't much care. You know how there's never Trumpers out there, and there were never Reagan guys out there, and you know how people like Barbara Comstock and others, I'm not voting for Trump. They announced for Harris. I want to make an announcement right now. If you're a conservative Republican in Maryland, do not vote for Larry Hogan. Well, the Democrat will win. I don't care. Do they care that Harris is going to win, which would be a big problem? Larry Hogan's running for Larry Hogan. Of course, the Democrat he's running against is a lunatic. A lunatic versus a self-serving political hack. I would vote for neither. Neither. Either write somebody in or just move on. But there's no way I would do that. No way. He may have been a good governor and so forth, but he's going out of his way, going on TV to try and undermine the presidential nominee of the Republican Party. It's more important that Trump win than Larry Hogan. If Larry Hogan wants to spend a lot of his time trashing Donald Trump, that is just an indication to me of an individual that doesn't have character. That's all. Run your own damn race. They bring up Trump, don't even mention it. Say, look, I'm running. I'm not getting into all that stuff. But he doesn't even do that. He says, if you're not voting for Trump, don't vote for him. I had the same thing happen with Reagan 2 times. So I'm not voting for Reagan, and I said, don't vote for that candidate. Too bad. He obviously doesn't want your vote, and he obviously doesn't respect you. Let him get, the vote of all the never-Trumpers. All 3 of them. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
You know, folks, just remember, while all this is going on here at home, many people are in dire situations. People are missing. People have lost everything. People don't have food and water. We've talked about the Samaritan's Purse charity. I hope you'll take a look at that. Other charities as well. And I hope you'll rally as best you can. I know many of you are hurting, to help these people. They are fellow citizens. And, you know, this Helene hurricane has created the worst flooding in modern history. And I want people to remember Kamala Harris was gone for 4 days. And she doesn't even speak about it today. Neither has Biden. It's like, okay, we put our time in, we took a picture. Maybe tomorrow or the next day we'll fly down there, take another picture. No, folks, this isn't the way to run a country. It's truly appalling to me. Now, I want to say something about unions, non-unions, businesses, and antitrust, and all the rest. This is a great country because we believe in commerce. We have a history in this country. We have a history of the union movement. We have a history of corporations being created, the Industrial Revolution. We have all this history. My attitude about this is, big is fine, as long as it's not a monopoly. As long as it's not a monopoly. We can't have one company that controls all pharmaceuticals. We can't have one company that controls all energy production, and we don't. We can't have any of this. So we have antitrust laws that were created about 100 years ago by Republican and Democrat progressives. And in those antitrust laws, they exempted unions because this was more of a populist movement. I think that was a huge mistake. Because I'm thinking about the American people generally. If you have a corporation that says, you know what, we'll raise it, whatever prices we want, and if you don't like it, we'll shut down the economy. Nobody would tolerate that, would they, Mr. Producer? So if you have a union of 45,000 people in a nation of 330 million people, and they say, you know what, you'll give us the wages, the medical benefits, you'll eliminate all new machinery and so forth, technology, or we're going to shut down your economy. That is unacceptable. 45,000 individuals ought not to be able to bankrupt 330 million people, particularly people who are struggling already. And tens of millions of Americans are struggling already. This isn't about whether you support the union movement or you don't. This isn't about whether you support commerce or you don't. That's all BS. This is about blackmail. Blackmail maybe by a company, but in this case, blackmail by this particular union. That's why I don't believe teachers' unions should be in existence. These public sector teacher unions, when they shut down school districts and shake them down, even though they're broke and even though kids aren't getting educated. I don't believe in that either. Now, I understand that more and more is embraced under this populist notion. I'm not a populist. I believe in Americanism. That's it. If I were a populist, I wouldn't believe in the Constitution. Constitution is not about populism. It's about limited representative government. So first, I want to read something to you. Well, you know what? First, I don't want to read something. Go to the clips, Mr. Producer. I want you to hear. Let's see here. Audio. I want you to hear from the union boss here, Harold Daggett, who's president of the International Longshoreman Association. I want you to listen to this guy, folks. Let's see. Where are we? Cut 11. Go.
These people today don't know what a strike is.
Right.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port, a lockdown. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me. I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does.
Guy sounds like a mobster. Does he not, Mr. Producer? All the rest of you Americans listening, those of you who are not among the 45,000, whether you're union or non-union, is this okay by you? He will cripple you. He doesn't care about hardworking average Americans. He doesn't give a damn at all. He makes an enormous amount of money, I hear. Sounds like a mobster. You construction workers, I'm going to put you out of work. You car salesmen, I'm going to put you out of work. Malls, I'm going to shut them down. Folks, you're not going to get food. You're not going to get clothes. You're not going to get anything. Small businesses, they go out of business. What are you going to do about it? Steal? No. Nothing. I'll shut everything down. There's not a business in America. If they said that, people wouldn't be furious. Everybody's afraid to confront this but me. Everybody. Everybody. It's sad. He's not done. Here he is on Fox News today. Cut 12. Go.
Are you worried that this strike...
They have the capital to settle this thing.
Are you worried that this strike is going to hurt the everyday American, the farmers that need to reach the export market? They're telling me that they're going to hurt through all of this.
Now you start to realize who the longshoremen are, right?
Nobody cares.
People never gave a about us until now, when they finally realized that the chain is being broke now. Cars won't come in. Food won't come in. Clothing won't come in. You know how many people depend on our jobs? Half the world. And it's time for them and time for Washington to put so much pressure on them to take care of us, because we took care of them and we're here 135 years and brought them where they are today, and they don't want to share.
Oh, right. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. And here he is. Cut 13. Go.
You are going to grind the economy to a halt here on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast.
No, not us. They are. Don't spin it now because you're Fox News. They're going to drive it.
It's Fox News. Mm-hmm. This is from Barron's. Many dock workers make $150,000 or more. And by the way, that doesn't even count health benefits and other benefits. Thousands of dock workers at ports on the East and Gulf Coast are preparing to go on strike. They already did. Port workers have some of the highest wages among blue-collar workers. Under the current contract with the East Coast Union, a top-scale longshoreman can earn up to $39 an hour, which translates to $81,000 a year. But many workers take overtime and extra shifts that have higher rates. Neither the union nor the ports have disclosed exact pay levels, but according to a 2020 report by the Waterfront Commission, the regulator that oversees the New York Harbor, more than half of the longshoremen based there, more than half, earn $150,000 and more. The 47,000 dock workers represented by the International Longshoremen's Association are asking for a higher pay, claiming that ocean carriers' profits skyrocketed from millions to mega billions, while the longshore wages remain flat. The ILA is asking for a $5 an hour raise for each of the next 6 years of the new contract, which means the hourly rate could reach $69 by 23. $69 an hour. And then we're not even talking about overtime and health care. Not only that, the union is demanding not only better benefits, but opposing the use of automated technologies at ports. So no automated technologies, no efficiencies. The work stoppage is expected to impact more than 50% of American imports. A prolonged strike at the ports could lead to a major supply chain disruption right before the holiday season. J.P. Morgan analysts estimate it could cost the economy $3.8 billion to $4.5 billion a day. That means you. That means you all. You're not going to have food, waiters and waitresses. You're not going to have clothing available for salespeople. Discount stores like Walmart, their shelves are going to be empty. This is no joke. The automobile industry is going to take a hit right in the throat. And one analyst says it could be $5 billion a day easy. Still, they warn that consumers could face higher prices or empty shelves for certain products. Some shipping companies have already warned of surcharges of $1,500 to $3,000 for each container in the event of a strike. If the disruptions were to last, those costs will be eventually passed on to consumers. To consumers. The timing of the port strike just a month before the presidential election could also bring a risk of politicization, especially if negotiations are prolonged. And where's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Nowhere. They've been asked to get involved in this. The longshoremen's union said, no, we don't want anyone involved. Right, because they're blackmailing the country. But all these merchants, small, they're not all Exxon, small merchants, merchants of every kind, they've been begging this administration, can't you at least sit down and try and referee this thing? No, I'm not going to. Look at all the mayhem and anarchy and dislocation, whether it's the border, whether it's with our relations with Israel, whether it's the docks. Just look what goes on with these people. Whether it is this hurricane, which is their Katrina. What a mess. If the workers eventually succeed ratifying a new contract that improved their pay by 32%, 32%, they want a $77 an hour is what they want, something like that. They want a one-time bonus going back to COVID days. Apparels, automobiles, fruits, vegetables, foods from overseas. The entire supply chain now is being threatened. The entire supply chain. Wasn't bad enough we had the pandemic. Not bad enough. We had the second pandemic, that is Bidenomics. Now we have the third pandemic. One union, monopoly control of the ports on the East Coast all the way down to Texas, from Texas to Maine. You hear this guy's a nut. The organization he's negotiating with said, we've offered them $50 an hour. They're demanding $77 an hour. Plus, we're not allowed to apply new automation to what we're doing. Plus, they want more medical benefits. Let's say the union gets what it wants. The price of food, clothing, construction, wood, nails, everything. The price of everything is going to go through the roof on top of government-created inflation. That's what's at stake. Antitrust laws should be applied to monopoly unions like this. I'm the only one in America who will tell you this, who has a platform and a large audience. The others are too scared. Wait, I thought we're pro-union. Well, maybe you're pro-union. This has nothing to do with being pro-union. I don't care if you're dressed up as a union boss or dressed up as a corporatist or dressed up as a kangaroo. It doesn't matter to me. You just said that you're going to leverage what you want by destroying the economy and the salary and income of hardworking, middle-class, union and non-union Americans across the country. And I'm supposed to agree with that, Mr. Producer? I'm supposed to throw in with that? No way. Biden says he doesn't believe in Taft-Hartley. Taft-Hartley is a federal law. It was used by Harry Truman to break the steel strike because he thought it was a national security threat. Biden says, ideologically, I don't believe in it. Another law he doesn't believe in. So people are saying during the debate tonight, what will each side say? Neither side will say what I just said. Neither side. Just telling you the truth. But it is the truth. Doesn't mean I hate all unions. Doesn't mean I hate union members. I never have. Doesn't mean I love all non-union businesses. It's not true. There's a lot of businesses I can't stand. I look at each one individually. If workers want to vote for unions under fair conditions, fine. If workers don't, fine by me. It's a free country. That's what I support. But when you have an egomaniac, mobster-like union boss, because he can literally control the flow of goods and services into the United States of America that affect 330 million people. Sorry, folks, count me out. And all you folks out there who are union, all you folks out there who work with your hands, all you folks out there who break your ass every day to make ends meet, you're going to be punished by this guy. He doesn't represent you. He didn't ask you for your opinion. He doesn't care. What's going to happen? He said the car salesman won't sell cars. Well, what happens then to the union members? The Teamsters member, the UAW member? They're going to be punished. They're going to be punished. What happens to the farmers in this country? They're going to go broke. They're going to go broke. I don't play politics with this stuff. It's Americanism. That's what it matters. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. I want to give a shout out. I have no financial interest, no political interest, no interest whatsoever. But when there's good people, I want to mention it. There is a restaurant that's been in Hope Sound, Florida for over 40 years. It is a fantastic place for those of you in that area who are looking for a place or not in that area, you want to take a look. It's called Harry and the Natives. It's been around a long time. They fought through the pandemic. They're having a fight through Bidenomics. And it is a fantastic, fantastic restaurant. It has basic foods. The camaraderie is unbelievable. Very patriotic. Harry and the Natives. If you're looking for a place to have fun and a good meal with your family, with your friends, they also have a bar. I don't drink, so forth and so on. I haven't been able to get to Florida because of this injury, and I won't be able to get to Florida for another month or 5 weeks. But I just wanted to give them a call out. And there are other great places, too. But they're on my mind this evening. They're on my mind this evening. Just because I'm very excited about what they do and how they do it. And that they've been around so long. Do you know how hard it is to be a local restaurant and to last about half a century? A family-run restaurant? Check it out. Harry and the Natives. It's in Hope Sound, Florida on A1A, I think it is. And in the crossroad is Bridge Road. Check it out. I'll be right back. The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk.
The Mark Levin Show, live and national at 877-381-3811.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, several weeks ago, we scheduled Trey Yingst to come on the program before what's obviously happening in the Middle East today. And I'm fascinated by Trey Yingst. I don't believe I've ever spoken to him. I certainly never met him. But boy, does he do a hell of a job in some of the most dangerous places on the face of the earth. First of all, Trey Yingst, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
First of all, I have a question. What would ever inspire somebody to report from virtually every war zone in the last 10 years? Isn't that frightening?
It is. It's often very frightening. Just in the past 24 hours, it's been a whirlwind. We've seen this ballistic missile attack against Israel. We were watching tonight as these missiles were raining down on the country. And overnight, I was in southern Lebanon with an Israeli commando unit as they raided Hezbollah positions. And it's just something that I've always loved to do. I came here when I was first 20 years old and wanted to cover the war and have been doing it ever since. And so I just grew up wanting to tell the stories of other people.
Now, let me ask you this, not to put you on the spot. This is a remarkable book, Black Saturday, an unfiltered account of the October 7th attack on Israel and the war in Gaza. You've interviewed almost every aspect of the individuals involved. Do you draw conclusions and have an opinion of the good guys and the bad guys and so forth, which you kind of have to keep to yourself, or do you keep that to yourself?
No, I write about it pretty extensively, and I always try to pose really human questions to leadership because I think their answers speak for themselves. And I find it in this conflict as well. And I think the best example of that is a story I did recently where we went to the Gaza border and we did a story on Palestinian kids who were getting evacuated with the help of the Israeli army and the Emiratis to go to Abu Dhabi and receive medical treatment. And that's just one story among many that we've covered over the past year where I try to find the humanity in these stories because I do think that at the end of the day, the good guys and bad guys reveal themselves in the statements that they make and the words that they use.
Did Iran really believe, or Hamas, after they attacked Israel on October 7th, that Israel wouldn't go full bore to deal with this? They clearly underestimated Israel, didn't they?
I think they knew and they didn't care. And it was a horrific thing. I mean, we were there in southern Israel on the morning of October 7th, and we thought it was a rocket attack. And we just headed towards Sderot, an area that so many people have visited when they go to southern Israel, this community of about 30,000 people. And we always report from there. And we thought this is just a regular rocket attack, and these have happened before, and we'll report live on Fox. And it wasn't. It was an infiltration, and there were thousands of these gunmen crossing into the communities along the border and slaughtering people in their homes. And I think Hamas knew this would draw a response, and they did it anyway.
And Iran, they fire 181 missiles, ballistic missiles into Israel. Sure, they have to believe that Israel's going to slam them back, no?
Absolutely. And that's the big question tonight. I mean, the Israeli cabinet met this evening, and they're discussing very serious responses, more serious than what we saw following the Iranian attack back in April, because there were a decent amount of missile impacts tonight. There are videos circulating that have been confirmed, and the Israelis have confirmed as well, the military spokesman making a few comments tonight, that the Iranians were trying to overwhelm Israel's missile defense system. And we know they have some of the most advanced technology and capabilities in the world. But when they're getting this many ballistic missiles at one time, and the Iranians are using these advanced hypersonic missiles, the Fatah 2 and Fatah 4, it's difficult to defend against. And so the expectation that officials here have, and this is what we've gathered tonight in the course of our reporting, is that it's not a question of if Israel responds, but rather when, where, and how.
You know, over here in the United States, we get the sense that the administration sort of has reins on Israel, tries to rein it in, Netanyahu and so forth and so on. Do you get the sense that's going on now? And do you get the sense that the Israeli government cares? What is your sense of this?
I think toward the beginning of the war, they seemed to care more. And we often, in the course of our reporting, would talk about the weapon shipments that come from the United States and land at bases like one of the bases that the Iranians targeted tonight. And we would talk about this relationship, and so often it changes. And you would see these comments made by the Biden administration about support of Israel or condemning Israeli action amid the war in Gaza. But then behind the scenes, the relationship would continue. And so I think a lot of times politically on a surface level, there would be major disagreements. But behind the scenes, when it comes to the security relationship, they understand that Iran is the common enemy between the two countries. I think now, though, especially as it relates to the war in Lebanon and the war specifically against Hezbollah, Iran's largest proxy in the Middle East, the Israelis have basically said to the Americans they're going to do what they have to do. And if the Americans aren't on board with it, it's too bad. That's the sense that we get from Israeli officials, because we try to pose these questions to them to get an understanding of what the relationship looks like behind the scenes. And we've seen the past 2 weeks, the Israelis taking out Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General, the man that U.S. officials warned if he was killed would lead to massive missile attacks on Israeli cities. We've seen missile attacks and rocket attacks on Israeli cities since October 8th, following the October 7th massacre. Hezbollah got directly involved in the fight. But this time, the Israelis knew that would likely be a response, a possible response from Hezbollah. So they launched these preemptive strikes to target so many of the launching positions in southern Lebanon. And that's part of the reason we haven't seen that extensive amount of fire coming from the north.
You know, America, this is a thoroughly compelling book. I got it 2 days ago. I began reading it immediately. And I'll tell you what's fascinating about your book from my perspective, Trey. It comes from different perspectives. You do an enormous number of interviews. It is laced with factual information, firsthand witness accounts, yours and others. You also provide a big picture account for it. I don't even know where you had time to write this book. Did you keep a diary, or you went out and... How did you do this?
I wrote it in the back of our car. We would stand on the Gaza border every day, covering the war as it developed. Some days going into Gaza with the Israeli military, and in between live shots, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I figured this is important. I mean, after we witnessed the attack on October 7th and we went into these communities and we saw the aftermath before these areas were cleared and cleaned, I knew we needed an account of what happened. And I wanted to not just tell that account through my eyes, but also through the eyes of the people who were directly involved. As a journalist, I want to focus on other people's stories, and so that's what I did. In Black Saturday, you hear from hostages who were dragged into Gaza on October 7th and then later released as part of the November ceasefire deal. You hear from Israel's defense minister. You hear from civilians, from soldiers, police officers. Interestingly, you also hear from Palestinian civilians, doctors, from Hamas leadership. And I'm posing hard questions to them because that's my role as a journalist on the ground here in the Middle East, is to hold those in power accountable. And if they're in control of Gaza, to pose these questions to them. And I think it's a fair read. I think it really it provides the realities of the war, even though some of them are uncomfortable.
The book is Black Saturday. It's out today, brand new, an unfiltered account of the October 7th attack on Israel, the war in Gaza. You can get it on Amazon.com. It's on all my social sites, any major bookstore in the United States of America. This book is so timely, so crucially important. Now, Trey Yingst, as you watch what the Israelis are doing, we have really experienced generals and colonels, special forces types in the United States military who are on Fox often. They are amazed about how remarkable what the Israelis have done with Hezbollah is, and most of them are saying now's the time for them to hit the nuclear sites in Israel. Apart from what the politicians are saying, these experts seem to be saying Iran is weakened, Hezbollah is on its back, Hamas is in hiding. If they don't do it now, they're never going to do it. What do you make of that?
You bring up a great point, and I think there's two things to talk about here. The first is the deterrence that Iran had and has since lost. Before, the Israelis were concerned if they hit any of these nuclear facilities, then suddenly missiles would be raining down, not just from Iran, but from the north at the same time. Well, now Israel's taken out so many of those positions, they don't have to worry about that as much. Hezbollah still has some capabilities, but not like they had before. And the second thing that I don't think people are talking about, but is critical to discuss, is the broader nuclear threat from Iran. Objective observers, the United Nations, UN nuclear watchdogs have indicated over the past year they have found enriched uranium particles at Iranian nuclear facilities close to weapons-grade material. And this indicates that they have basically reduced the breakout time to build a nuclear bomb to a matter of weeks. And they just showed hours ago that they're able to get ballistic missiles to target in central Israel. And so all they would have to do was put a nuclear weapon on top of a ballistic missile, and suddenly Israel is in a catastrophic position. And Israeli leadership understands that. And I think American leadership also understands that. And it wouldn't surprise me. And according to some recent reporting in the Wall Street Journal, nuclear sites and oil refineries, all types of energy sectors are on the table, according to this report, for a possible Israeli response to this large-scale attack by Iran tonight.
Do you think the United States would support that? We keep hearing in this country about de-escalation, about ceasefire. I don't see any de-escalation or ceasefire, and I just don't see it. I almost think that's a talking point that people just repeat.
I'm not sure, but it does often feel like that. We're often on the ground watching this incoming fire and these operations that are taking place. And we not only speak with American officials, but we're gathering these statements every day in the course of our reporting to put together our stories for Fox. And so often there are these calls for diplomacy and de-escalation. And I think in a utopia and a world where everyone was peaceful and sitting around singing Kumbaya would be a great idea. But the reality on the ground is quite different. And there's a war unfolding. And I think that sometimes the statements that you hear from other countries, not just the United States, make it seem like there's not a war already unfolding. And I think the best example of that was over the past week when this 21-day ceasefire proposal came forward by the French and it was supported by the Americans and the Qataris. Well, the war has been ongoing since October 8th. The ceasefire, the concept of a ceasefire while the war is unfolding, no officials, not from Israel and not from Hezbollah, actually, were on board with a ceasefire. But all of the headlines came out and said the United States and France agreed to a 21-day ceasefire. Well, The United States and France aren't at war.
Right. Let me tell you something. You're fascinating. Mr. Producer, if Trey will come back maybe next week, that would be a good thing. I don't normally do that, but I still want to inquire here. The book is Black Saturday, an unfiltered account of the October 7th attack on Israel and the war in Gaza. Folks, I want to encourage you. If you're going to get a book, grab this one, Amazon.com. It came out just today. It's fresh off the presses. On all my social sites, we're linked to Amazon as well. Grab your copy of the book. I mean, it is so fascinating. And honestly, Trey, so are you. And so be safe, keep it up, and we're going to try and get you back if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mark. I'd love to join you again.
All right. God bless. Take care of yourself. The book is Black Saturday, folks. You're going to want to grab a copy of this from Amazon.com. I'm serious. It's really a fascinating book. And I don't know him. As I spoke to him there for the first time, actually, Mr. Producer, I was more and more intrigued by him. Weren't you? More and more interested in what he had to say, quite frankly. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data, unlimited or unlimited. And guess what? Both are stupidly expensive. So folks, stop overpaying for data you're never going to use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you get to choose how much data you actually want. Listen to this. For just $25 a month, get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data, which is more than enough, plus mobile hotspot. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless and get America's best 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is easy. There's no contract. There's no activation fees. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month when you sign up with Pure Talk. You know, these debates really don't matter to you and me. They matter to the tiny percentage of the population that is so ignorant, so uninvolved in what's happening to their own country, what's happening to their own lives as a result of government and these radical policies. And that's why there's so much on the line. But we know all about Tim Walz. We know all about tampons in boys' rooms, illegal aliens getting driver's license, illegal aliens getting free college. The Minneapolis riots, he held back the National Guard. The city was destroyed. The COVID lockdowns, the worst in the country. He gives $125,000 state taxpayer grant to an imam who celebrates October 7th. And it goes on and on and on. Sex changes for children without parental notification. This guy's a sick bastard. Lies about his military career, lies about his coaching career. Now he's lied about his time in China. Questions about associations with the wrong people in China. This guy is like the worst person possible, and he wants to be vice president, and they want him one step away from the presidency, and they're going to do everything they can to destroy Vance. Was a real Marine. Was a really very, very poor kid in a poor family in Appalachia. And he picked himself up by his bootstraps. He made something of himself. He joined the Marines after 9/11. He created his own business. He became semi-wealthy. He wrote an unbelievable book about his experiences. And then he runs for the Senate and he wins. This is an accomplished man in everything he's done. Tim Walz is a liar. Just like Kamala Harris, a serial, pathological liar. That's why she chose him. He's a disaster for America. He's a disaster, period.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, we're covering a lot of ground, and we're covering it well, in my view. In literally 54 minutes, the vice presidential debate begins. It'll be J.D. Vance versus Tampon Tim and the two Democrat operatives for CBS. Now, about Tampon Tim, as the New York Post pointed out some time ago, he's half of the most radical far-left ticket in the history of the country. When Harris announced the so-called former teacher, National Guardsman, as her running mate, Walz has pursued and backed several radical progressive policies that have animated both sides of the political aisle during his tenure in Minnesota, and was widely viewed as one of the most leftist vice presidential candidates. Here's a look at some of his resume as governor. Sanctuary state status prior to winning the governorship in 2018. He expressed support for turning Minnesota into a sanctuary state, meaning he supports scaling back local police cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. And that's exactly what he did. During his tenure as governor, Walz backed legislation that expanded benefits for illegal immigrants, illegals. They could receive such as state-funded health care assistance and driver's licenses. He's massively increased taxes in that state. He inherited a surplus, and now they have a big debt, much like Gavin Newsom. COVID-19 snitching. Shortly after the onset of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, Walz's administration as governor opened a hotline for individuals to snitch on those who were eschewing state stringent lockdown rules. Gee, that sounds very Marxist, fascistic, doesn't it? I think so. That prompted scores of reports against everyday Minnesotans who were simply walking their dogs or doing rudimentary activities during the pandemic. His use of emergency powers during the pandemic also outraged critics, including the institution of a mask mandate and business shutdowns. Early in his governorship, Republicans in the state Senate pushed for an education savings account, a voucher-like system, in which state education funding would follow the student if a parent selected a private school. This is particularly important for poor kids and minority kids in failing school systems. Governor Walz, however, opposed the effort. It's not the time to get into a lot of policy decisions, he said at the time. So we're not going to defund our public schools at this time, when especially those hardest hit need the money more than ever. It has nothing to do with defunding public schools. It has everything to do with educating our kids. Listen to this one. In 2023, Wall signed the so-called Trans Refuge Bill. Trans Refuge Bill. That restricted state agencies from complying with out-of-state subpoenas. You know, subpoenas are issued by courts, right? Arrest warrants and extradition requests for people who traverse to Minnesota from other states for gender-affirming care, quote-unquote. He also signed an executive order protecting, quote, gender-affirming care, unquote, in Minnesota, including puberty blockers, surgeries, and hormone therapy. So in other words, this could be done with kids from out of state without their parent even knowing or being involved. The order also called upon state agencies not to approve health insurance plans that didn't cover gender-affirming operations, that is, sex changes. Now, the Minnesotan has undertaken a handful of initiatives aimed at tackling climate change. In 2022, he unveiled Minnesota's Climate Action Framework. It features objectives such as increasing the number of electric vehicles on the road from 1% to 20% by 2030, slashing the state's greenhouse gas emissions by 50% over 8 years, both of which will destroy the income and the ability of just common folk to travel and so forth. That plan also pushed for a 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. So you people in Minnesota are going to freeze in the winters, that's for sure. During his time in Congress, he managed to score an A rating from the National Rifle Association, and Evan Hunter Waltz has boasted about his shooting skills. But his relationship with the NRA soon soured. Following the Las Vegas mass shooting, Waltz donated contributions he got from the NRA to a nonprofit backing victims' families. Last year, Waltz then signed a gun control package that featured universal background checks and a red flag policy. Now, that creates a process for law enforcement to take firearms away from individuals perceived at risk of harming themselves or others. This is a big one. When Minnesota, in Minneapolis, caught on fire in 2020, Waltz faced scrutiny, intense scrutiny over his delay in deploying the National Guard to help restore order in the city. It was obvious to me that he froze under pressure under a calamity as people's properties were being burned down. State Senator Warren Limmer, a Republican who helped lead a committee that investigated the response to that unrest, said according to the New York Times. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who's another radical kook, but also he publicly blamed Waltz for the response, the chaos that unfolded. He asked for the National Guard. They needed help. Waltz didn't answer. Minnesota GOP Chairman Hahn accused the governor of being fearful of alienating his progressive base. Soft on China. He speaks Mandarin and has a history with China that critics have been quick to highlight. He spent 1 year fresh out of college teaching in China as part of the World Tech Program. He later hailed the experience, saying, "No matter how long I live, I'll never be treated as well again." 2016, in an interview with AgriPulse, in which he suggested the U.S. and China should not have an adversarial relationship, before conceding he'd like to see improvements from China on human rights, trade, and environment. Yeah, what about those 2.5 million Uyghurs? What's the problem? I've been there about 30 times, he told the outlet. I don't fall into the category that China necessarily needs to be in an adversarial relationship. I totally disagree. Now, people are saying he said he was there during Tiananmen Square. It's a lie. There's now an investigation taking place, a serious investigation, not just right-wing stuff, on what his relationship was with Communist China, quite frankly. He's a radical on abortion, free lunch and free college, but they don't have other things listed here. There is an imam in Minneapolis who celebrated October 7th, who believes in the obliteration of the Jews in the state of Israel. He embraced that imam. He praised that imam. In fact, he gave that imam 2 grants totaling $125,000 from the Minnesota taxpayers. When he was called out on it, I said, well, he's not a personal friend. This guy's a sick bastard. Tampons in boys' rooms. Any one of these woke things you can think of, any one of these radical perversions you can think of, he established in law. And he did it in short order. And if he were up for election today as governor in Minnesota, he'd lose in a landslide. As I said, the taxes are through the roof. The debt is through the roof. and he's destroyed every aspect of that state. And it's a sanctuary state, so there's a massive amount of illegal immigrants pouring into that state, too. He will spend tonight's debate talking about Charlottesville, talking about Trump and the Haitians, talking about the cat lady, talking about all these things, because the media do not want you to focus on him, his policies, what he would do to our country is what he would do, is what he did in Minnesota. And can you imagine that tag team, Harris and Walz? Two psychopaths, two lunatics. Can you imagine administration controlling the levers of power from the Department of Justice to the EPA to the Department of Interior to the Agriculture Department? Country will never be the same. Never be the same again. The border will be wide open. The Islamists will be running crazy because you have two Islamists. You have Harris and Walz. Harris and Walz. Look at the chaos we have in this country right now. Look at the lack of an effective federal FEMA response to Hurricane Helene. It's a disaster. People there are now saying, we haven't seen FEMA here. Harris is busy, glitzy Las Vegas and Los Angeles, multi-million-dollar fundraisers. 4 days later, she finally shows up. This is her. She's cold-blooded. All that inhumanity, sex slavery, children missing, brutality going on. All the fentanyl on the southern border and the other border. She seemed like she gives a damn. Our enemies are rooting for her. Foreign and domestic. So debate away. Doesn't change a damn thing for most of us. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want to welcome Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, to the airwaves. Danny Danon. Israel and the Israeli people have been through a lot over the course of the last year. Quite frankly, over the course of your history, you've had a lot of people opposed to you because you're a righteous nation doing a righteous thing. And the Iranian regime is a Hitlerian regime. It has killed Americans. It has killed Europeans. It has killed Israelis. And so they unleashed, in coordination with Hamas, a slaughter of the Israeli people. They unleashed, in support of Hezbollah, thousands of rockets on Israel. The Houthis, rockets into Israel. And then they fired rockets into Israel. And Israel clearly is not putting up with this, is it? And Israel's now going to have a response to Iran. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, like you mentioned, we are at war now. We're under attack from 7 fronts, and all fronts are connected to Iran. But what happened today, they actually took off the mask because they use the proxies, usually Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, but today sending almost 200 ballistic missiles into Israel. Basically, they're sending a message that now they are attacking us directly, and I can assure you that we will retaliate. We will not sit idly by after such a barbaric attack. 10 million Israelis had to run for shelters. Imagine the entire population of New York City that will have 10 minutes to find a shelter. That's what happened a few hours ago in Israel. And I think now we are preparing our response. It will be painful. And we will send a clear message that, we are in pain after what happened to us on October 7th, but we are not weak. We are a strong nation, strong people, and we are willing to stand up against evil.
And that's been proven time and time again, and especially now in the Netanyahu government. I mean, this constant call right after the October 7th attack, even by our State Department, for a ceasefire. I don't even know what the hell that means. Hezbollah firing 9,000 rockets into your country starting on October 8th. A ceasefire, de-escalation. I don't know what the hell that means. The Houthis firing missiles into Israel. De-escalation. I mean, they've up but destroyed the... Let's do it this way. The Houthis have destroyed Yemen. That is, Iran has done it. They've destroyed Lebanon. They assassinated the president there some decades ago. Gaza was a beautiful area. They destroyed that area too. Iran has taken over Iraq. Iran has taken over basically Syria. Iran has its finger in all of this. And you're right. Now they've taken off the mask, another direct attack. And I think Israel is poised to really do something significant about this, no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to send them a very, very strong message. about our resilience, about our capabilities. And you know, Mark, look at the map. See the distance between Iran and Israel. And one should ask himself why they are attacking Israel. We have no border disputes. We have no disputes over resources. And all of a sudden, they are spending so much money to attack us. So it's a radical, fanatic regime. We have to take the measures to send them a clear message not to mess with us. Enough is enough. You know, Jewish blood is not cheap anymore. And today, unlike the past, when you had a Nazi regime, today we have the capabilities, we have the means to defend ourselves, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
I'm getting from people I know in Israel that the country truly is united like rarely, like almost never before. They understand they have a common enemy. They understand they have a leader. They understand that their boys, their men and women, are really performing exceptionally well, and they're making enormous progress. Is that your sense about what's going on in Israel now?
Yes, you know, we are a strong democracy, and our enemies, you know, caused us a lot of pain. You know, we are getting ready for the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and we will look back and we'll say it was a painful year. We still have 101 hostages, 70,000 Israelis are displaced. They live like refugees outside from their communities. But, you know, that pain brings us together and brings us to a place where we are standing strong, united, to fight back. And we put aside all the arguments we had. You know, you see religious and secular, left and right, you know, fighting together, standing together. That's why we have seen amazing results in Lebanon, where we fought Hezbollah. And, you know, we did the work of the U.S. When you look at those terrorists we killed in the last few weeks, Nasrallah and Ibrahim Akil, they killed hundreds of Americans. So basically we're fighting the war of the U.S., and I expect, you know, the U.S. calling both sides to stop the violence. But that's unacceptable. You don't have both sides. You have aggressor, and you have Israel that defends itself.
It's interesting. They don't consult with the people of Iran, who despise that regime. It's a police state. They use much of their military to destroy and ruin and kill their people and imprison them. They don't ask the people of Lebanon what they think about Hezbollah when Lebanon took over that country and assassinated their assassinated their president. They don't ask the people of Yemen, who are starving to death as a result of the Houthis. In other words, these regimes, these terrorists, genocidal regimes, they are choking, destroying, killing the people in these countries that they take over. And I find it very interesting that nobody ever talks about that.
You know, when we speak about Gaza, Mark, your point is exactly accurate, because people speak about the future of Gaza and the future of the Palestinians in Gaza. And I tell them there will be no future if Hamas will stay there. If you leave this radical regime in charge, no one can speak about reconstruction of Gaza. And same goes to the countries you mentioned. And I think today it's a war between, you know, barbaric savages that want to have chaos and civilizations, Western democracies. And we happen to be like in the middle, so we are being attacked. But it's much, much stronger than Israel. Look at the UAVs that attack Israel. Those UAVs can reach the shores of Europe today, and within a few years, they will be able to get to the shores of the United States. So we are in the front line. We have to be strong, but I expect our allies, including the U.S., to stand with us, to give us the support, so we can send a very clear message to Iran that we will not allow them to continue with the hostility that they are spreading in the Middle East.
You know, Mr. Ambassador, every survey I see in this country, 80% of the American people stand behind Israel. 80%. So I don't want you to answer this. I don't want you to get in trouble. So no matter what our government, this administration, is telling you or pressuring you people, just understand that the American people get this. They get it completely. And so do the Israeli people. They've rallied. They've united. So people really in free countries that understand what's taking place, and even people in these other countries, I guarantee you, the people in Iran, the people in Lebanon, I noticed the Lebanese army has stood down. They said, this isn't our battle. They really, I guarantee you, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, some of these other countries, they are thrilled And isn't it sad that you have to carry this weight on your shoulders in the Middle East, the only country to do that? You may have some alliances that we're not aware of, and that's perfectly fine. But the heavy lifting is done by your country. We have 1 minute left.
So I think that, we have friends. Some of them are quiet. I cannot tell you names, but, many Muslim leaders that I'm in touch with them, they call me and tell me, Danny, go all the way. Finish the job. Go against those radicals. They are threatening our regimes, and we know that. But I think that the main problem is that some of the democracies believe that you can appease evil. And that's a mistake. You cannot appease evil. They will never be satisfied. And we are getting ready to stand back, to retaliate against Iran. And we expect our friends and allies to pray for us and to stand up.
Well, just know, Mr. Ambassador, your friends and allies in this country, the American people, are with you 100%. Be safe, and God bless.
Mark Levin, a proud conservative. No ifs, ands, or buts. Call in at 877-381-3811.
There's a breaking story at the New York Post as I speak. I want you to listen to this. I've been saying that Kamala Harris is cold-blooded, whether it's the slavery, women sold into sex slavery, little kids missing, the fentanyl. She just doesn't give a damn. Whether it is those little kids that were molested by pedophiles, that I'm apparently the only one who's willing to talk about it. There's a long record on the record. When she was DA and Attorney General, she wouldn't even take meetings with them. Stephen Nelson at the New York Post, Kamala Harris slammed for ditching hurricane season preparedness briefings. Vice President Kamala Harris is at the center of a new storm for foregoing annual hurricane season preparedness briefings that were a staple of her predecessor, Mike Pence's calendar, with critics arguing the omission reflects how she may govern as president. See, the rest of the media are not going to report this, so you need to tell people. Foes of the Democratic presidential nominee highlighted the missing briefings as the death toll for Hurricane Helene passed 143 in the Southeast, as Harris scrambled back to Washington after 4 days from Las Vegas to attend a FEMA briefing and booked a trip Wednesday to storm hit Augusta, Georgia. Harris hasn't demonstrated the ability or the desire to do the apolitical parts of the job that have a huge impact on our lives, a former Pence aide told the Post, as criticism of the flat-footed federal response to Helene became a campaign issue. Folks, FEMA is not in place. Why should Americans trust her to start in the Oval Office? Then President Donald Trump and Pence held pre-hurricane season preparedness meetings, plural, with federal emergency officials in each of their 4 years in office. Biden had similar meetings in 21, 22, 23, though Harris doesn't seem to have joined or held her own parallel events. Former acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf told the Post that annual drop-ins from the president and vice president are important, that the omission calls to mind Harris's role as Biden's point person on illegal immigration. She's missing from the border. She's missing from the pre-hurricane meetings. Just fits a larger pattern, he said. It doesn't seem like she wants to roll up her sleeves and actually get involved in governing the country, which is hard to do. It's not glamorous. It's a lot of briefings. My guess, he added, is she would act the very same way as president, which is hands off. I'm not going to run the country. I'm going to put a team together. They'll run it. I kind of talk about it, which is obviously a very different model than what President Trump did. Wolf, who had a number of high-profile jobs that dealt with emergency management in the Trump-Pence administration, said the briefings served to put FEMA workers on their toes and also to force their managers to analyze anticipated issues while also facilitating support from on high. It's like any other job where your boss is asking you specific questions. You get more motivated to do a better job. It's not that they do a lesser job. It's just that they know the importance is being placed on their work. FEMA is now struggling to get a hold of the situation in the areas hardest hit by the flooding, including in western North Carolina. The people in western North Carolina feel let down, deservedly so, said Representative Chuck Edwards of North Carolina, whose district includes some of the worst impacted areas. The response has been disappointing. We've begun to see some resources brought in today, but the storm was over at about 80 hours ago. The storm was over at 10 a.m. on Friday. We knew the storm was coming, and only today we're beginning to see the first FEMA employees in trailers and helicopters come in. It's unclear why exactly Harris did not join the Biden hurricane preparedness briefings held during the first 3 years of their administration. why she didn't hold her own, as Pence did every year rather. Harris's office noted her role responding to various natural disasters, but didn't contradict the central claim by Republicans she didn't hold prep sessions. I was on the phone. Spokesman Ernesto Apreza pointed to 3 Harris hurricane-focused events, including a July visit to Houston after Hurricane Beryl, April 2023 visit to University of Miami, where Harris announced $562 million in federal funding for climate-resilient projects, and an August 2022 briefing from FEMA and NOAA leaders in Miami on climate resilience. Interest from Pence ahead of each hurricane season, that's the point, was almost like a forcing factor in the prior administration, Wolf said. Look, it requires the FEMA administrator to get with his senior leadership to say, okay, here are critical issues. We're going to brief the president and the vice president on. It's everyone in agreement. This is what we're tracking. This is where we're going to need help. This is where we're deploying. We're repositioned here, there, everywhere. I'm going to ask DOD for assets. In fact, he recalled, what I would often see Vice President Pence say is, great, that sounds good. If you have any problems getting those assets, let me know. It appears as though they underestimated the severity of the storm, and I'm not sure how you do that with all the technology today, said Wolf. They pre-positioned a lot of assets and resources in Florida. That's where it makes landfall, so okay. But they didn't think about the downstream effect to a certain extent to the level that they needed to, and now they're playing catch-up. I've seen internal stuff from FEMA that all their categories of response needs are still red in the state of North Carolina. We're now 3 days past the hurricane, and now we're many more days past the hurricane. Trump had a private briefing from officials in June 2019, and Pence visited the National Hurricane Center in Florida the same month for an update. In May 2020, Trump and Pence hosted the FEMA director in the Oval Office for a hurricane season briefing despite the raging COVID-19 pandemic. Apparently, VP Harris was also named Hurricane Czar, given how little concern she demonstrated for Americans of the path of these. Folks, this is a stupid, ideological, pathological liar, radical. She hadn't done a damn thing. She's just climbing the ladder. And this is frightening. And she picks one of the most contemptible, radical, buffoonish individuals possible. And we're supposed to watch a 90-minute debate. And, oh, he performed well, because this is how Washington conducts itself. Oh, he was so human. Oh, did you see? He's just another guy. He's from the Midwest. And wasn't J.D. Vance so mean? Did you read J.D. Vance's book, Mr. Producer? My wife read it. She said, this guy's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And she's reading passages from his book to me. This is a really down-to-earth guy who was in horrifically hard times in Appalachia. He talks from the heart. He explains his family, where he came from, all these different things. And they try and turn him into a buffoon, like they try and turn Trump into something, like they try and turn Reagan into something. Even their man, George W. Bush, stupid. Reagan, stupid. Trump, dangerous. Hitler, J.D. Vance. Oh, the cat lady. This is our media, our disgusting, phony, corrupt media that promotes tyranny, totalitarianism, and Marxism, and then says when you criticize it, oh, you're a danger to society. These two CBS phony moderators, this Margaret Brennan and what's her name, Norah O'Donnell, they're the worst. They're the worst. We'll see how that goes. But you watch, we've played this Margaret Brennan. She doesn't interview conservatives and Republicans. She attacks them. She cuts them off. You're supposed to be a host. You're supposed to interview people. Tim Russert was great. He might disagree, but he'd let you finish your sentence, and he'd challenge you. But he didn't do stupid little things. And before him, Joel Spivak from Meet the Press. He was great. I remember these different shows. And ABC had Brinkley. Remember him? And Will and Donaldson. Donaldson was annoying as hell, but it was a good show. Today, it's like these comics late at night. They're all a bunch of hacks. They're not comedy. They're not funny. They're jokes. They're jokes. But there's so much to reveal about this guy, Walls. They kept him off the campaign trail, too, just like they've kept Harris off the campaign trail. This is an amazingly diabolical and evil campaign where they don't want the American people to really know what's going on. So they agree to this debate, even though they know it's going to be 3-1, even though it's the same Praetorian Guard media, the same liars, the same Democrats. Everybody knows it's the same thing. So it'll be 3-1. 3-1. And I bet you J.D. Vance still does very well. Guy's smart as hell. Smart as hell. Oh, man. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
This is breaking. Iran says it has finished attack on Israel amid fears of spreading conflict. Oh, I bet. I bet they're wetting their robes right now in Jerusalem. Reuters. Iran said earlier its missile attack on Israel was finished, barring further provocation, while Israel and the U.S. promised to retaliate against Tehran's escalation as fears of a wider war intensify. I don't understand this phrase, fears of a wider war. Fears of a wider war, that's the failed diplomacy. That's appeasement. That's subsidizing your enemy. The United Nations Security Council scheduled a meeting. Oh, that's fantastic. They said our action is concluded unless the Israeli regime decides to invite further retaliation. You know, it's amazing. They fire 181 missiles, right? Ballistic missiles. Not one of them hits a main target. And they say, okay, we're done. Excuse me. All you showed is your further weakness. It's the biggest ever military blow against Israel. Although it wasn't a blow against Israel. Too bad Reuters is so pro-terrorist. Sirens sounded across the country and explosions rattled. Yes, we know. No injuries. Israel activated air defenses. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to hit back hard. He said, Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it. And it will pay for it. Fears that Iran and the U.S. would be drawn into a regional war have risen. This is all Biden. There was no war. Folks, forget about the debate. Forget about the whole damn thing. Just look. Use your own brains. Look at reality. Look at the border. Look at the economy. Look at North Carolina. Nothing pre-positioned there. Everything is a disaster. Look at your pocketbook and your wallet. Look at your job security, such as it is. Look at the grocery prices. Look at the energy prices. Kamala Harris says, we need to turn the page. We need to look to the future. Well, if you turn the page and look to the future, you got to broom her because she's the status quo. She's done this. She's done this. They've done this. Our allies are paying the price for all of this. We had peace and prosperity, literally, under Donald Trump. They can say what they want about cats and Charlottesville with their filthy, disgusting lies. They can say whatever they want. I watched this little quisling, the governor of Pennsylvania. Hey, Shapiro, I've invited you on radio. I've invited you on TV, you coward. You think you're a tough guy? Let's go. Somebody tell Shapiro, the great governor of Pennsylvania, that little Mark Levin, you know, he's not too smart. He can't debate. Tell Shapiro, the guy that's trying to un-Jew himself, as we say. Tell Shapiro I want to debate him. Why hide from me? Right? We'll do it on radio. Hell, I'll do it on Fox. I don't care. He just likes these kiss-ass interviews. This guy was a state delegate from Abington Township. I grew up in Cheltenham Township. Cheltenham Township is right next to Abington Township. I've dealt with jerks like this, liberal Democrats, in Abington Township and Cheltenham Township. And I ran for the school board, and I won my election there when I was in law school. This guy, he weasels his way onto the commissioner as a commissioner in Montgomery County as the chairman. Then he goes from there and he becomes attorney general because nobody else wanted it. Then he runs for governor because the Republicans put up a slug. He gets like 61% of the vote. And now the jerk is bypassed because he's Jewish. And so he does his best to un-Jew himself. Now he's out there on TV trashing Netanyahu. Says things about Trump. Trump's accomplished 1,000 times more than this nebbish. And all I want to do is debate him. But he won't come on. So all you people, anybody who knows Shapiro, tell him I said he's a coward. He's a quisling. He won't come on my program. He won't be confronted. I've looked at his policies, too. He's a disaster for Pennsylvania. So he goes on programs that kiss his butt. Okay, fine. But he is what he is. So Iran's on the run. And I seriously doubt Israel's going to blow that off. No way. All right, Mr. Producer, I am looking desperately. Let's see here. Yes. It's live radio. So I got to do this. Bear with me. My computer's down. It happens. All right, I found it. Here we go. All right, the debate is going to begin. There'll be a lot to talk about. There's always a lot to talk about here on Radio Free America. God bless each and every one of you, you great patriots. I am honored. Take care.